Good afternoon, everybody. This is Patrick from the Poison Pen Bookstore in Scottsdale, Arizona. And thanks for joining us for another virtual event. And we're delighted to have our friend Peter Lovesey with us this afternoon. He's going to be talking about the brand new, the 21st in the Peter Diamond series called Showstopper. And this is a copy of the book right here. This is the US edition. And the UK will be coming out, as I understand it, in January. And we will be getting signed copies of the UK edition. So I'll put links to both of them in the comments field. And if you have questions for Peter, go ahead and put them in, and Barbara will bring me back on screen towards the end of the hour. I'd be happy to ask any questions. So Barbara, over to you.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Peter, what a pleasure to see you. I think we have to treasure our every opportunity as we are both becoming more senior, don't you?
I think we do, Barbara. Yes, I'm afraid it's got to that time in life.
Oh, it has. So there are many things that Peter and I can talk about, but let's talk first about The Last Detective, because I remember when Sarah Ann Freed, who was sadly now deceased, but at Mysterious Press, when she bought The Last Detective and how excited she was. It's the first Peter Diamond mystery. And
yes.
I guess my question, Peter, is did you really expect that The Last Detective would turn into a 21-book series?
No, I don't think I would have given it that title if I'd thought it was going to go on to become a series. It was meant to be a one-off. It really was. And if you can remember the story, towards the end of it, he got into a situation where he was in trouble with the assistant chief constable. I think he'd injured a small boy, which you can't injure children if you're a policeman. He pushed the boy against a radiator, and the boy was a bit of a nuisance. But and his mother, who was the witness under suspicion, was disappearing through the back of the house. So Diamond had to rush through the house, push the boy aside. The boy cracked his skull on the radiator, and ended up in hospital. Diamond was being carpeted by the assistant chief constable for this, and there came a point when I felt as the writer, perhaps Diamond was telling me that he couldn't possibly just take this rebuke from the assistant chief constable. He would have to be angry himself and storm out and resign. And he did, and he resigned from the police, and that was really partly why it was called The Last Detective. But it was also the fact that he was rooted in the past a lot. But I didn't think that it could possibly sort of go on and become a series. It was never meant to be. And then it was picked up by various reviewers and liked, and it won the Anthony Award at the Bouchercon, and I just wasn't expecting that. I didn't even attend the Bouchercon. I think I would have done if I'd realised that there was a chance that the book would really win the award, and then of course there was pressure from publishers to write another one, and the second book that I wrote was. Had to be with Diamond out of the police. So it's one of those stories which I don't like trying to do, where the policeman almost stumbles over a body, and the hero stumbles over a body and has to act as a kind of amateur detective. And Diamond was doing that. He had a job as a security man in Harrods department store, and he ended up in Japan. It was quite a convoluted plot. And in my book 3, I thought, I've got to get him back into the police. I can't have this. I can't go on writing about him as an ordinary member of the public, because I don't think amateur detectives should work in the the 20th century as it was. So I wrote a book that had him it was called The Summons, and it was a situation where the police needed him back almost more than he needed them, because it involved a sort of a cold case. Something had happened before with him, and he had to, in a way, revive the case. And the assistant chief constable's daughter had been kidnapped, so Diamond was definitely needed, very very urgently needed. So they sent a car for him to London. brought him all the way back to Bath and told him the situation, and he got back into the police on his own terms and got his old job back. And after that, it did become a series.
Well, you've had, one of the hallmarks of this series, you've had some really interesting women in it. I mean, Georgina, who is the current scourge of Diamond's life. But she was not the assistant chief constable back at the outset, was she?
No, she wasn't. It was a man at the beginning. Trying to think of his name. I can't remember. I don't remember these things too well now. It was about 30 years ago. But yes, Georgina sort of came into the picture later, and I'm rather pleased that she did. She's a good character, I think. She has quite a few battles with Diamond, and he doesn't always come out on top. So it's quite rather fun showing the arguments between them, and wondering whether he's really going to get kicked out. But this time, but it hasn't happened up to now with Georgina. She's tolerated him just about, but hauled him off to headquarters to be reprimanded and everything else. And she finds him very tiresome in many ways.
Well, it is unnerving to know that in Showstopper, she suggests that it's time for Diamond to retire.
Yeah.
That's a plot thread that we won't pursue. One of the real joys, I think, of reading this series is all the different aspects of life and culture and so forth in Bath. I mean, we have explored any number. This one, we are in actually television and entertainment industry. But we have with literary figures, we have looked at music, we've looked at one of my favorites is the British Civil War, not the English Civil War.
Yes.
I absolutely love Skeleton Hill, which remains one of my total favorites, and that one involved a reenactment, which we in America tend to think that we're the only people who reenact the Civil War, but not true. So, so Peter, obviously you've had a great time exploring. What was it, like 2 books ago when you had the skeleton that was dressed like
Bo Nash, yes, that's right.
And so it gave you a chance to really talk about, the history of Bath as a spa and the pump room and, all that 18th century, because that was a big fad. And I think that people, I mean, even the Romans were smart enough when they were in Britain to find hot springs, because everybody was cold all the time and dirty and whatever. And Bath is blessed with hot springs and mineral hot springs, which taste disgusting, but probably because I've actually drunk the water in Bath, and I'm sure you have.
Yeah.
But gives the appearance that it would be healthy and good for you, whereas really it was probably just a change in diet and so forth that made a lot of people feel better, not really the water. But anyway, Bath is a fascinating city, but I realized that while Peter Diamond is still there and you've adjusted to changes in Bath, like closing the old police station and moving them to
yes, and yes, that's right. That really irks him. He's moved out of the centre of Bath, which he enjoyed very much being in, and has to sort of commute in almost from this office out in the country where he is, and that things like that really happen. So I try to reflect Bath as it moves on. I mean, we had the Empire Hotel where I set one. In fact, it was that book that I mentioned, The Summons. The kidnap story. The kidnap victim was in the old Empire Hotel. That's gone now, and that's that's become something else entirely. The building is there, but the use of the building is quite different. And so I enjoy setting books in Bath enormously. I don't want the books to appear like a sort of advert for the beauties of Bath all the time. So I give you the dark side and the bad side, and bad things do sometimes happen there. And if you walk behind these gracious Georgian buildings, you see the plumbing and and the stains on the wall and everything else, and that sometimes gives me a chance to, as a sort of image of Bath, to show that there is a dark side as well. And, there are underground. There's a whole underground world in Bath as well, of cellars and routes through to places and so on that I've used once or twice in the books.
Well, it's not all Georgian elegance, and it's not all Jane Austen.
No.
Although we think of the Royal Crescent and so forth. In fact, was it either the last book or the book before? You were in the Theatre Royal, I think, and actually attended a performance at the Theatre Royal and thoroughly enjoyed it. Is that still there?
Yes, oh yes, very much so. And yes, and I was lucky enough to be invited to introduce the book from the stage. So I stood on the stage and I was able to point out features that I'd used in the book as I was talking about it, which was really nice, great privilege. It was very good of them to do that.
But while I've known you, when I first met you, you actually lived in Bath, but then you moved to Chichester. Where was it you moved? Down.
Yes, I was in Chichester on the south coast. I was there for nearly 20 years. Right. So it's a long time ago that I was living in Bath, or just near Bath. But I love the place, and enjoyed my days there very much. And I suppose I hanker a little bit for it all, even now.
Well, it two curses for Bath because of the physical condition, which involves a valley and so forth, and the River Avon. It has pollution, which is hard to dispel, and it has traffic. So, but I'm really interested, Peter, why did you move to Shrewsbury, which is one of my favorite British cities? But I'm so surprised to discover you moved there.
Well, we talked earlier at the beginning about old age, and it's just old age that's moved me here, because my son has married a Shrewsbury lady, and he's been here for some time and sort of knows it very well. So we have visited before and got to know it a little bit, but as we got older, he said, he thought it might be sensible if we moved a little closer to him, and it's a very good thing that we did, because he's been marvelous at taking us around places and doing the things that I don't always want to do, in the way of driving and a little bit of shopping for us and such like. So it's a great joy, really, to be near to family.
Well, it is. Shrewsbury, for those of you who might remember Ellis Peters and the Brother Cadville series, is where that was set, although medieval, and is distinguished by having the English Bridge on the east side and the Welsh Bridge on the other. So it's in that border country between England and Wales, and a really remarkable city. I've spent quite a lot of time there, and in fact visited Ellis Peters in the last days of her life she had the same editor that Peter had, who acquired The Last Detective, named Freed. And we went to visit Edith. And I took her books to sign that I managed to pick up from Headline on the way. And when I got there, she said to me, only you would come to visit me in a nursing home with books. But it turned out that it was really nice for her, because the other people there, she was cussing. The other people there didn't know who she was, or, that she was an author. So she had like fame engulfed her.
Yes. Oh, well, you were there almost. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Oh, that's really nice.
This the last time I saw her in person. I still treasure her letters. But I found Shrewsbury to be the Abbey, the famous Abbey where Brother Cadville does, is now not that far from, isn't the railroad viaduct or something? I mean, it's not glamorous at all anymore, the old site of the Abbey.
No, that's right. We had a visit this summer from my editor at Soho, Juliet Grames, and she's a great reader of the Cadfaller books, and asked if I would sort of take her to some of the places. So we went along to the Abbey. It's only I live near the English bridge. So
Okay.
and that's really where the abbey is, or quite close to there. So we went along and looked at things and saw there's a stained glass window there, a modern one with a little cadfael figure in it.
I love it.
Reference there. We pointed that out, and we looked at various things that were associated with the books that I could remember. I have to confess that I'm not a great reader, and I'm not a great reader of anything. So I've never got through all of the Cadfael books. I've seen a little of the TV shows and enjoyed them very much.
Were not filmed in Shrewsbury, but somewhere over. I'm trying to remember. It was Derek Jacobi became.
Yes, Derek Jacobi, excellent.
He's a wonderful one. Anyway, it was not filmed in Shrewsbury. And if I remember right, is it the Severn? But anyway, the river makes a loop around Shrewsbury, which is why there are these two bridges. It is the Severn, isn't it?
Yes, oh yes, that's right. Yes, it's this time of the year, the river can get quite high and quite dangerous for flooding. So you watch out. But there's some lovely walks by the river, and Jax and I go along there and enjoy, feeding the ducks and swans and all those things.
Oh, I'm bringing it up in part because I really miss Peter's editor who acquired this series. She was a very dear friend and died too soon. But also, every once in a while, I think if Diamond actually has to move away from Bath or gets a case or something, I'd like him to go to Shrewsbury because there are not enough books set in Shrewsbury anymore.
No, you're giving me ideas. Perhaps I can contrive something. I hope so. Maybe.
Yeah. No. And even though a policeman in theory can only be a policeman where he has authority, I don't know that a vacationing Peter Diamond, because after all, he has now Paloma, who is into fashion and all sorts of things. I can see that they might vacation if Diamond were ever to do that somewhere near Shrewsbury and get involved in something.
Yes, that's right. And I think it may well be that he was needed for a case that sort of somehow bridged the two places, Bath and Shrewsbury. Somebody, a suspect who was part of the time up here. I think I did something like that when I was living in Chichester. I brought him down to Chichester, and he was there for a short while in one of the books.
He was, yeah, absolutely. And speaking of Paloma, one of the things you did, which I thought was fairly brave, is that Diamond was married when we met him. He married a bit late in life, and his wife had been married previously and had, what is it, one child? Is it just one child? I'm trying to remember.
No, they were childless. She was childless.
She didn't have, I thought for some reason.
Have a child. No, she had a very difficult time and had a hysterectomy, so she was unable to have any children, and it was quite a sort of regret to her and to Diamond,
which you mentioned in the book. But
yes.
In the course of this series, his wife, Diamond's wife, is murdered, and Diamond winds up investigating the murder, which is why now he has Paloma, with whom he lives but is not married to, and they have an interesting relationship. Did you decide that it would be better for them not to be married, but to have the possibility of fracture always present?
Yes, he was deeply in love with his first wife, with Stephanie, and I think it would be wrong somehow for him to be linked matrimonially with anybody else. But Paloma has been a very good companion to him and with him, and they have a relationship, a love affair, you'd call it, but I think he could still stop short of tying the knot.
Oh, I thought it was very brave of you to murder a major character. I mean, that's kind of unusual. I'm
glad you take that point of view, because many of my readers, write to me and tell me the opposite. Tell me, how could you possibly do that? I really like that character. Stephanie was great and was good for him. And how could you do that, Peter? But the reason I did it was that the books were becoming just a little bit too cozy and predictable, I felt. I don't know how many I'd written with before that happened, probably about half a dozen or so. I just sort of felt he needed a huge challenge in his life.
Right.
And he did. He had it, and it was a great shock, but it formed the basis of a novel. She was, it doesn't give too much away to say that she was murdered in the first chapter of the book, and then he was supposed to be barred, of course, from investigating the death of his own wife, but knowing Diamond, he sort of had to find a way, and eventually it becomes his case. Yeah, it was a big shake-up for him, but somehow it freed me to do more things with the character. And I even at that time, I didn't suspect that it would go on to be more than 20 books, but it has.
You had written one previous series, that Wobble to Death, your Victorian series, because
Yes.
there were, I'm trying to remember, 6, 7, how many?
Sergeant Cribb, there were 8 of them.
8, okay. But then you've written a lot of standalones, which have been wonderful.
Yeah.
And you've written, while you've been writing Diamond, haven't you written 2 or 3 at least? I know Sergeant Cribb was the first, and Peter Diamond here. You wrote a couple of books about Hen Mellon. I remember The Circle, which I particularly liked.
Yes,
and
yes.
Ages ago, you wrote 3 books with Bertie, Prince of Wales, who was actually Edward VII, Albert Edward, Victoria's son. And I really enjoyed those, but those were from a long time ago.
Oh, they were, yes. I wouldn't like to date them, but certainly before I started this series. So,
you've also written a lot of short stories too.
yeah.
Right. So, short stories, I think I'm always interested that a novelist can write short stories because they're so different. Do you have to adopt a different, mindset, or how do you go about?
I don't think so. Yeah, there are some ideas that you like, but you could never be expanded into a book novel form. But they just sort of fit into a short story, and very often that's the way I go. I know I enjoy writing short stories. If I could make a living at it, I would. But I don't. But unfortunately, as you know, they don't sell quite so well as novels, particularly novels in the series. So I don't think I can take that chance even at this stage. I'm giving up writing nothing but short stories. Although I maybe in my dotage I will.
Well, I've known Peter for 32 years. We actually met at Agatha Christie's centenary in Torquay when I was lucky enough to be seated at a table with Peter, and it was Harry Keating and Sheila and you and Jax and Rob. I'm trying to remember. He's left now. And Robert Barnum. Robert Barnum and his wife, and then Robert Richardson. There we go. And little did I know that I was basically being seated as a kindness to a brand new sort of member of the Crime Writers Association with these giants of
go on.
Oh no, it was, I had no idea how lucky I was, but it turned out I was. And I just wrote, Peter, I wrote the last chapter and brought in a few other authors in Bloomsbury's Agatha Christie Handbook, which is an academic publication at an exorbitant price. But I kept souvenirs of all of that weekend. Do you remember in Torquay, they had a play, they had a flower festival.
Yes.
We went to visit Greenways, and what's her name? It'll come to me in a minute. Was the chairman, Catherine Aird was chairman of the Crime Writers Association, and Matthew Pritchard and his wife showed up, and anyway, I kept all that. So I was able to write kind of a long essay about meeting you and the other authors, and dancing with David Suchet, which I know. It it was so much fun wearing my old
Yes.
dress that I go grocery shopping in because it was the only dress I had with a long skirt. And here's an unfair thing. Men can go out and rent formal wear practically anywhere. Women don't get to do that. You're stuck with whatever wardrobe you've got.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. No, I wasn't aware of that. No.
Anyway,
Yeah.
we've known each other for 32 years, and I think that Peter has a naturally criminal mind because he is so good at coming up with plots. But not only that, he's really an ace at coming up with these wicked twists at the end, which in fact he does in Showstopper. And it's a sorrow to me that I can't tell you what actually happens. But you really do love diverting the reader's attention only
Yes.
to smack them at the end with a real surprise. Does that something you have to plot out ahead of time, Peter, or does it just sort of come naturally to you? How do you do that?
Yes, some of the twists are thought about beforehand, and before I write a book, I think it through pretty carefully, and the major surprises I've probably thought about, but then others will occur as I'm writing it. I don't work in drafts. I just write the book chapter by chapter, slowly, very, very slowly. But when I leave the chapter 1 and move on to chapter 2, chapter 1 is largely what it will become in the book itself. So there are not many changes that are made. And for that way of writing, I'm one of those sort of plotter people. You really have to think it through. When I started, I used to write a synopsis of about perhaps 18 pages or so, chapter by chapter, so that I was clear in my mind what was going on. And the synopsis got shorter and shorter as I moved on and got more confident. And now I have it in my head. I mean, I'll make a few notes when I'm thinking about it. It may take me 3 or 4 months to work the plot through. That's my method. I've often been on panels with other writers who say, how could you do that? I find it so boring, knowing what's going to happen. I like the excitement of having the blank screen in front of me and thinking, oh, I put something different on here, but it's not my way. It's my way is the boring way of knowing it all beforehand. But the pleasure then is putting the words together and the sentences and in the right way, in the way that I think will entertain the reader.
Well, reading your books, I've always thought you were a plotter because the plots are so intricate. It would be really difficult, I think, to make it up as you go along. But and you just said, you still must have some surprising moments when, even though you're progressing in an orderly fashion through the book, that something will come up that doesn't necessarily break up that skeleton that you've created, but nonetheless adds surprise.
You've said it beautifully, Barbara. It is exactly that. And sometimes a character who was a minor character suddenly is given a major thing to do in the story and becomes a much more important figure in the book. So that can happen as I'm going along too, and I enjoy it when it does happen.
Well, I'm sure you do. I mean, every book has a life of its own and the characters in it. And, I always think of authors. I was taking a walk with an author today who was staying with me, and someplace in the conversation, she suddenly stopped me and she said, I'm really listening to most of what you're having to say, right? And I said, yeah. But she said, I just thought of the last line of the book I'm working on as we're walking along. And I thought, okay, so that's the writer's truncated brain. I love it. Right. So let's talk about, just for fun, let's talk about the book here for a little while. And this time, the industry or culture or whatever you want to call it, the aspect of life that you are talking about relates to a hit TV show, which you call Swift.
Yes.
And is that based upon any actual TV show that you've watched, or is this one you just had fun making up?
That's one I had fun making up. I mean, over the years, I've had a little bit to do with TV. I had that very first series, the Sergeant Cribb series that you talked about, of 8 Victorian stories, that was made into a series, and we did a second series for it. So they were very good. They involved me as a scriptwriter with my wife Jax, and we got out on location to various things, and so I got to know a little bit about how it all works. Sat in the control room and met the actors and the other people, the important people who make television work. So I got a bit of an idea there, and I've had 1 or 2 little dabbles with TV since, but I'd never sort of quite got around to writing about it, and I thought, well, I will, and I must think of a TV. Probably it's going to be a cop show that, and then I thought, no, Diamond, it's going to be the opposite. It's going to be from the point of view of a successful criminal who is in a series, who goes on from episode to episode and never gets arrested, and Diamond would thoroughly disapprove and deplore that kind of story. So that's what he's faced with when he is called in to investigate a series of mishaps. Some of them seem to be quite small, and some of people disappearing, and there's a suspicion that somebody has actually been murdered as the plot develops. But a local newspaper takes on the idea that there's a kind of sort of voodoo sort of twist, sort of what's the word I'm looking for?
A jinx.
Jinx, yes, a jinx. There's a jinx on these characters, and on the whole television show. And Diamond doesn't have any sympathy with that at all. He doesn't believe in jinxes. He's not a superstitious man, until he, has to get involved. First of all, he sends along his most junior copper to investigate, saying, this is something for you to do. I don't want anything to do with it. But then the young copper finds out that there's far more going on than first appeared, and that the jinx might be something that is sort of being quite deliberately engineered by one of the characters. So Diamond really has to get involved, and then the disappearances turn out to be far worse than that. So it's a murder plot in the end. But I enjoy, it's the usual thing of Diamond getting thoroughly brassed off and annoyed about the whole thing, and having to sort it out one way or another.
Man, Georgina actually orders him not to. She's unhappy with the whole thing and orders him not to do it. You do show Diamond as a mentor, which I think is interesting. He's actually quite. This is a book in part about teamwork, I think, or he's valuing his own team and this young officer that he sends out.
Yeah.
He's paying, and that's kind of a different side of Diamond. But you also point out that it's a regret for him not to have children. So I guess those two things kind of tie together, that he sort of doesn't have a child of his own, but he has the chance to mentor this.
Yes.
No,
that's right.
Yeah, the theater is theater people notoriously superstitious. I mean, there's the Scottish play, for example, that kind of thing. So it's not surprising that as things are going wrong on the set of Swift, that it's attributable to superstition, or the players think it's superstition. Also, because people have a tendency to work very short spells it's not uncommon for somebody to walk off the job or get a better offer or whatever it all is. So it's easy enough to disguise what's going on. And
Yeah,
you
it,
know, one of
it
the
makes
most,
a very, sorry.
no,
I
go
was
ahead.
going to say it makes a very good newspaper story as well. The idea of the jinx and the series of accidents and misfortunes that have happened, and it's the press pressure that finally forces Georgina to act and tell Diamond that after all he's got to investigate, because it's becoming a scandal, and the press have, have got word that that the police are interested and they want a result. So it's that kind of pressure that she has to subscribe to, and Diamond is back doing what he wants to do.
Oh, he is, but of course, the specter that he might have to retire is hanging over him. So,
Yes,
in
yes.
some sense, you know, he goes ahead and contradicts her and disobeys her order or whatever to investigate this case, in part because he's so unnerved by
Yeah.
you know the sort of quasi threat that she has issued about, you know, in that very British understated way, you know, have you thought about retiring? Which is
Yes.
a lot different. And I'm not, I don't know how it all works, but I'm not, you know, can a chief constable actually force him to retire?
Oh, I think so. I think, yes. I mean, he's. I don't say very clearly how old Diamond is, but and it doesn't matter too much. I mean, some authors, very clear about their characters getting older as the books go on. But I've rather sort of dodged that and haven't said what age he is lately. But when you think that in the last Detective, I think he described as a middle-aged man, and that was written about 30 years ago. He's well past the real age of retirement. The problem is that he's got this cat called Raffles, who was originally Stephanie's cat, and he's kept Raffles, and Raffles sort of gets older, but you can't kill a cat, because this is one thing that the readers really will get at you for. You can kill off the wife, but not the cat.
Right.
So
Or the
Raffles has to go on.
Yeah. Well, I've always assumed that, you know, that your books, I mean, the cases kind of start one after the other. One ends and the next one starts, and time is all very fluid in this. And he
Yeah.
hasn't really gotten that much older. And, you know, Peter, I think that readers are complicit in that. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, and look at the problem that Michael Connelly and Ian Rankin and authors who have decided to age their characters in real time. Look at the problem you run into when you're up in 20 books in a series or something.
Yeah.
And, you know, you've done that and you've basically aged your character out of any credible ability to perform the job.
Yes, yes, that's right. Exactly. So I duck it.
Yeah, no, I'm all for it. I'm delighted. I want
Good.
Diamond to go on being 56 forever. So that part's
Yeah,
okay. So one of the most, you know, in part, really annoying features of this book is that right in plain sight, you can see, I mean, when you get to the end, you see that some of the mechanism for what's happened in this has been right there in front of you all along. So I do think that Peter is very, very good at misdirection, or if not misdirection, at least sort of cloaking, you know, whatever is going on. It seems so ordinary, but at the end, when everything slots together and you think, ah,
Oh, oh, that's kind of you to say so. Yeah.
you know, I think you do a masterful job with that, and you have throughout, I think, all the Peter Diamonds, is that, you know, you are basically, you've been a member of the Detection Club the entire time I've known you. And, you know, there are rules about fair play and, you know, no doppelgangers and other stuff. And I think that you know, whether it's conscious or unconscious, you pretty much adhere to that throughout your career.
Yes, I suppose I hadn't thought about it really, but I suppose I do work within the rules.
Yeah. No, I think you're fair with your reader. You know, when you get to the end, the reader can, as I did when finishing Showstopper, can, you know, look back and say, ah, you know, that's why that was, I could have seen that, you know, whatever. And I'm sorry we can't talk about it, but you'd all be very cross if you're watching this and haven't yet read the book if we did. But I do think that that is another of where excellent job. So is there going to be a Peter Diamond 22?
I'm working on it. Yes. I had a good break after writing Showstopper, but I'm about 100 pages into the next one.
Excellent.
So yes, with a fair wind and favor, I may get there.
Well, I'm delighted to hear that. I think any of you watching will know that Peter has won so many awards and so much recognition for his wonderful work at Diamond Dagger. I was there for that. And then I remember that when Bob Barnard got his Diamond Dagger, his publisher sent his editor, Suzanne Kirk, and me to the ceremony to represent Scribner here in the US. So, and I was very happy that Bob, because, after that, his health deteriorated and
Yes.
he wasn't able to continue writing and eventually died. But you really want to see people get an award like that when they can enjoy it, right?
Yeah. He was a great friend, and such a tragedy that he went. Yeah.
Oh, and he was another absolutely amazing ability to come up with twists and do stuff. I'm trying to remember. Scandal in Belgravia is one of my all-time favorite mysteries. You never really see it coming, and it happens on the very last page, almost in the penultimate sentence. The entire book suddenly goes, and you think, oh, that's what this was about all the way through. He was a very clever man, wasn't he?
He was, and a wonderful lecturer too. I remember him speaking about the Agatha Christie's disappearance at the conference at Torquay. I don't know, was that conference at Torquay where you were?
It was, yeah.
Whether it was a later one. We've had several there. We had one this year. I was there this summer, back at the hotel, but Bob was marvelous. Without a note in front of him, he held us enthralled for about 40 minutes. It was amazing and insightful, and
he was a stalwart at St. Hilda's College, Oxford, which is also Val McDermott's alma mater. And they do a crime conference in August, which I was lucky enough to go to several times. And I remember Bob being active in that. And yes, he did almost always talk about Agatha Christie. He was so good at that. Anyway, Patrick, why don't you come and join us and see if we have any comments or questions from the audience. I love it when Patrick, this is sort of magical, like some kind of stagecraft here. Very good. Hello, Patrick.
Hi. Let's see here. What do we have? Let's see. Phyllis says, I just picked up The False Inspector Dew at a used bookstore. Any stories behind the character?
Oh, well, that was one of the one-off books that Barbara mentioned, and I was very lucky because it won me the Gold Dagger of the Crime Writers Association. So it's a rather special book for me. The character, one of the characters is a dentist, and I think I got the idea while I was sitting in a dentist chair. It's just as well to be thinking of something else other than the drill and the injections. So that was the beginning, as far as I can remember, of that one. And I wanted to set it in at that time, I was only confident enough to write period novels, sort of novels set in the past. And I thought, well, this one I can do in the period of sort of between the wars, just after the First World War, and enjoyed writing it very much. Had a lot of fun with it.
Let's see, what else do we have here? Okay, let's see. Who are some of the authors, when you were just starting out, that really inspired you as a crime writer?
Oh, wow. When I was just starting out, Patricia Highsmith was one, because she was so good at writing books from the criminal's point of view, and allowing the criminal sometimes to get away with it, and then move on to yet another book. And I thought that was a great achievement. It was rare in those. She wasn't the first to do it, but it was rare, and so I certainly admired her. Conan Doyle, of course. I went through the Sherlock Holmes stories when I was a teenager. Read them all and got to know the whole Holmes thing very well. John Dixon Carr, his wonderful plotting and again, he was great master of the classics or period mystery.
Locked room mystery too, right?
Yeah, locked room. Yes, that's right.
Was Reg Hill a contemporary of yours?
Who? Sorry, again?
Was Reg Hill a contemporary of yours?
Yes, yes. Yes, Reg Hill and Bob Barnard, who you mentioned, and I were all born in the same year, 1936. Yeah, we got along fine. I think we met originally at conference. I think I probably met Reg in America first. There was an international crime writers conference, which was organized by the Mystery Writers of America. But it wasn't a conference really for fans and readers. It was for writers, and it was my first trip. It would have been 1976, I think, and Reg was on the trip, and I got to know him very well, and Harry Keating and a few others I only knew as names. I'd read their books, but it was a great joy to link up with them and find out that they were just ordinary people. and Reg, a great wit, extremely amusing company. I loved him, and of course, and Bob too was just the same. It really could make you laugh.
Reg Hill is another amazing plotter. I thought some of his books are so extraordinary. I saw HarperCollins recently has reissued a Reg Hill or two, but I would love it if I've talked to Martin Edwards, but the British Library Crime Classics, which Poison Pen Press began to publish here in the States, rarely wants to go past 1960. In fact, you have to sort of push. And I think about authors like Reg and Bob and some of their astonishing work. And I'm hoping that at some point maybe either the threshold of the British Library moves forward, or somebody else will decide that the second half of the 20th century is now historical and worthy of classic publication, because there are so many terrific works there. And Martin and the British Library have done a fabulous job reacquainting us with people in the 1930s and 40s who were not Allingham and Sayers and Christie, but were really, really fine writers and undoubtedly popular in their day. Do you remember Mary Kelly? You wouldn't have been old enough, but Mary Kelly wrote a book called The Spoilt Kill. Actually won the Gold Dagger. I'm trying to remember, over some major author in maybe 1960. So maybe that's as far as they went.
Yes, I did know Mary. I met when I joined the Detection Club. It was Mary who was the secretary then. She wrote to me telling me that I'd been elected to the club. And when I got there, we shared the same editor, who was Lord Harding, who was George Harding, who was the crime editor at Macmillan. And Mary hadn't written a book for a long time. She didn't write very many. She probably wrote about 5 or so in her lifetime. George was always pursuing her to ask, whether she was working on the next one. And I remember she sort of hid behind me at one point while we were in the detective, because George was bothering. I don't want to see him. I don't want to see him. She knew that he was going to say, "Oh, you said last time you were working on a book, Mary." And yes, so she was always having to make excuses. But great writer, beautiful writer.
Yeah, she really was. And it takes place in Staffordshire and the Potteries, which is a fascinating part of England. But for those of you, who are asking Peter, anyone asking Peter this question, you should look at the British Library crime classics and the ones that are perhaps post-war. I think they've done some wonderful reprints of authors that Peter knew and that I read in real time, because both of us are in our 80s, so we're old enough to have actually done that.
Yeah.
But for those of you who aren't seniors, there's a wealth of things there for you to read.
Yes,
There are so
Martin
many great
Edwards.
writers that have kind of fallen out of publication. And
Yeah,
I wonder if Barbara, maybe a slightly different imprint, like maybe the British Library modern crime classics or something that would focus on some of those neglected writers. Like
maybe.
Bill James is another one that would be great. The Harper and Isles
Mm,
histories.
The
yeah.
vaults at HarperCollins, which published Agatha Christie, they had something called the Collins Crime Club. And they have some astonishing books in their vault. And also, Peter, do you remember? I'm sure you do. Gallant's had a wonderful crime line. And remember, they all had those sort of bright
Yellow.
jackets.
Yes.
Sort of like the penguin books with the green and the penguin. Gallant's had the yellow.
Yeah. No, they were the HarperCollins and Gallant's were the main publishers, I think, at the beginning when I started, and then Macmillan started the crime list, and I felt fortunate in being one of the first authors to be published by them, as a crime writer.
Right. And they're still doing that. And of course, Harper.
Yes. Oh, yes.
It would be nice if some, it's great that the British Library is doing this program, but the truth is some of the publishers have books in their vaults that they could unlock if they wanted to. And during the pandemic, Patrick can agree with me that we sold an astonishing amount of classic crime and other classics, haven't we, Patrick?
Yeah, we have. We have.
So it'd be kind of nice to think that maybe people got a taste for, not just rushing out to buy the most contemporary new crime, although heaven forbid that they shouldn't rush out to buy Showstopper. We don't want to discourage them. But, maybe it's possible for some of these authors whose books are still in the possession of their publisher to do something with them.
I was going to say that it takes a real expert to have discovered so many of these neglected books and brought them into print. Martin Edwards has done a terrific job. He's so well versed in the whole history of the crime novel, and has written several books, huge books about it. But he's just the right man, and I'm so pleased that he's editing that series for.
Me too. And he's a demon for work. He was an attorney or a solicitor. Yeah, when he retired, I think, I don't know what his practice was like, but his idea of leisure time is so exhausting. I really wonder what his workload was like when he was actually working. Wow.
Yeah.
Anything else, Patrick?
Let's see. There's a question from Fred on YouTube. He asks, can I read Showstopper without reading all the previous Diamond novels?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I hope so. I'd like to write them in that way. And no, you should be able to get straight into it and enjoy it, I hope.
Yeah. But fortunately, all of the earlier Diamonds are in print from Soho Press. And so if you're hooked on Showstopper, you can go back and read your way forward.
That's about it for the questions that have come in.
Wonderful. Well, Peter, it's always a pleasure to spend time with you and to read your absolutely wonderful books. So I'm thrilled to know that Diamond 22 is in progress. And you can see the difference. See, I'm holding up my advanced reading copy, and in this space that says advanced uncopy edited edition, meaning if I read it and I stumble over something unfortunate, I'm supposed to just brush that off because it's not a finished book. Patrick has the real cover, and you can see that there's the whatever they call them in show business. Is it like what is it called? The movie board, show board? I can't remember. There's a name for that thing.
Yeah, the clapperboard. Yeah.
Clapperboard, thank you.
Yeah.
Where they have, information about the takes and all. So I think it's a very clever cover. And Soho Press, thank you, Soho Press, has done a wonderful job producing Peter's books and keeping them in print. So we're grateful for that. Peter, let me wish you a very happy holiday season. Merry Christmas to you and Jack. And
Thank you, Barbara.
I really
And-
hope to get back to England, maybe to the Harrogate conference, and detour over to St. Hilda's and
Oh.
detour up to Shrewsbury. It'd be wonderful to
You
see you again.
You must be. It will be great to see you.
Thank you. I'll
Thank you for this interview and for knowing so much about my career. It reminded me of things that I'd forgotten.
Well,
it's been a pleasure.
It's been a real pleasure. And I will send you the links to the video and the podcast that will appear tomorrow, probably. And I'll send them to your publisher so that your fans can share those. Okay.
It's been a joy.
Right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks so much
Thank
for your time.
Bye.
Hello. We hope you're enjoying our programs and podcasts with authors. We'd like to expand them, and your help would be appreciated. Please make a donation at poisonedpenfoundation.org. 100% of the proceeds will go to help connect authors with readers in this difficult time. Thank you.